Welcome back, fellow nostalgia seekers. This is Howlin' Through Neo Tokyo, where we hold on for dear life as master mangaka Katsuhiro Otomo takes us on a wild ride through the perilous streets of a city where psychokinetic wonders wait around every corner. Today will be the final installment, wrapping up the Akira series with chapters 31 through 38. If you've made it this far and you haven't already, please subscribe. It's the best way to show support for the channel. Anyway, we've got a lot of ground to cover, so I'll save my thoughts for the end. Let's just get right into the thrilling conclusion of this captivating series. Chapter 31, Stadium Show. Chapter 31 opens with a shot of the American dirigible entering Neo Tokyo. Aboard, Dr. Simmons examines the map, looking for an appropriate landing spot. At the Olympic Stadium, the new Akira hideout, we see Kaneda as he leads his forces into battle against the cultist militia. Kaneda mans a turret aboard the caretaker bot, firing shots at the cult's forces. The cult has firepower of its own, however. We see one of their men fire an RPG right at Kaneda before our perspective shifts. Inside the stadium, the Eggman walks down Yamada's unit. His attention briefly falters when he hears the explosion outside, leaving an opening for Yamada to strike. Yamada shoots him in the hand as he charges forward. Once he closes the distance, he pistol whips Eggman, sending him to the ground. Yamada takes no half measures here. He puts a round in the down man's skull before our perspective shifts. Outside, the smoke clears to reveal Kaneda made it out of the blast unscathed. He urges his men onward as he leads his assault to take down Tetsuo. Speaking of Tetsuo, the scene then shifts inside the stadium where Kaori stands distraught over his severely wounded and disfigured body. He uses what little strength he has to tell Kaori to run away, to protect herself, but she can't bring herself to leave him in such a state. When his anger boils over and he screams at her to leave, his body reacts to his loss of control. His arm bloats into a mass of writhing flesh and wires before it rips apart from his body entirely, crashing to the concrete floor. Kaori screams in terror as Tetsuo falls to the floor in agony. As she runs away, his body erupts once again, a new arm sprouting from a deluge of flesh in his abdomen. The moment Kaori exits the stadium, she runs directly into gunfire. She makes a break for it, bullets landing all around her. Back in Tetsuo's quarters, Colonel Shikishima watches from the shadows as Tetsuo writhes in pain. Seeing his opening, he reveals himself. He draws Soul's remote targeting beacon and aims it on Tetsuo. As the remote locks on, we see Soul's laser cannon charge up and fire, ripping a hole through the atmosphere as it bears down on the Olympic Stadium. The battle outside ceases as the shockwave of the blast sends debris everywhere. In another wing of the stadium, we catch up with Taicho as he and several men lead Akira through the facility. Out at sea, we catch up to the American military as their fighter jets take off, bound for Neo Tokyo. The rogue scholars huddle somberly discussing the situation. Bernardi reveals that the military finally hacked Soul, but the laser's already been fired. All they can do is wonder what the target was and what the effects may be, since its last firing led to the second phenomena. In the same vein, they admonish the Admiral's all-out attack on Akira, a thought that gets juxtaposed with the Admiral on the bridge outlining his plan to cruise through the mouth of Tokyo Bay in a full frontal assault. Back at the Olympic Stadium, we see Joker as he assesses the fallout from Soul. When the smoke clears, it's not Kaneda he sees. It's Tetsuo standing on an untouched parcel of land directly in the center of the blast radius. The Colonel stands nearby him in stunned disbelief. Enraged at the sight of Tetsuo, Joker comes swooping in on his flying platform, guns blasting. Although none of his shots land, the attack still changes Tetsuo. His power flares, disfiguring him once again. This time he transforms into a grotesque infant-like creature with tendrils of flesh that shoot out in pursuit of Joker. Joker does his best to evade, but he gets caught in their grasp. The whole time Tetsuo's infant form balloons to giant proportions. Seeing an opportunity, the Colonel tries to fire Soul once again, but the remote targeting system malfunctions, leaving him defenseless as Tetsuo's new form consumes the platform he stands on. As the ground crumbles under the Colonel's feet, our perspective shifts to Kaneda and Keisuke. Dumbfounded, they watch on as Tetsuo's transformation continues, until the stairs beneath them collapse. Meanwhile, Joker is able to fire several shots off at Tetsuo. It's enough for him to break free. As he flies out over the bleachers, Kei comes into perspective. As Joker flees, she walks right into the thick of things. As she approaches Tetsuo's grotesque new form, she receives telekinetic instructions from Miyako, telling her to provoke Tetsuo even further. Without hesitation, Kei storms in. She leaps up using her powers to shoot through Tetsuo's chest like a bullet. When she exits, Tetsuo falls. He lands with a splat, globs of flesh flying everywhere. The flesh is sentient, however, shooting towards Kei in a barrage that sends her crashing through the wall of the stadium. We then catch up with Kaori as she flees the chaos through the tunnel of the stadium. She runs into Taicho and Akira, who she instantly asks to help Tetsuo. She tries to explain the situation, but Taicho doesn't pay her any mind. He's more concerned with the fact that Tetsuo let her live, accusing her of using her feminine wiles to win his favor. Instead of offering to help Tetsuo, Taicho orders his cronies to ready their weapons. He intends to use Akira's power to help them attack him. Kaori protests, but Taicho insists it's either him or them. Concerned for Tetsuo, she tries to run off and warn him. But before she can get far, Taicho guns her down mercilessly. Back outside, the Colonel lies injured, watching as Tetsuo's body reforms once again. Once corporeal, Tetsuo ignores his surroundings, his attention instead fixed on finding Kaori. He sets off towards her as Kaneda pulls himself from the wreckage nearby. He and Keisuke mount the caretaker bot and set off after Tetsuo. Inside the building, we see Kaori sprawled out and bleeding. Taicho and crew step over her body on their way to Tetsuo, only to be stopped in their tracks when they run into Yamada's unit. Taicho's men open fire, forcing the Americans to take cover. Once behind cover, Yamada orders his unit to take out everyone except Akira. When Taicho notices the Americans haven't returned fire yet, he sends one of his psychic enforcers to scope out the situation. The man uses his power to destroy the boulders the Americans hide behind. Nowhere left to hide, they jump out, shooting a dart into the enforcer's arm. Once hit, the enforcer laughs, mocking their tactics. But it doesn't take long for the poison to make him regret his words. When he falls to the ground in convulsions, Taicho orders a retreat. They turn and run back towards Kaori. In the final panels of the chapter, we see Tetsuo standing over Kaori. A tear falls from her eye as she tells him she knew he'd come back for her. Chapter 32, Class Reunion. Chapter 32 opens with Taicho running into Tetsuo, who's hunched over Kaori's body. Without a second thought, Taicho begs for Tetsuo's help dealing with the Americans, but he's unresponsive until two poison darts hit him in the arm. The moment they do, his power surges wildly, his arm erupting once more. The flesh lashes out, striking American soldiers as he undergoes another transformation into his giant infant-like form. The cultists, including Taicho, attempt to run. However, he's crushed under falling rubble. Meanwhile, the Americans don their gas masks and unleash their special biochemical gas on Tetsuo. The gas disperses, taking out Taicho and some cultists, but it doesn't reach Akira. Before it can, Tetsuo begins vacuuming it all up, Kirby style. He laughs maniacally as he steps out of the gas cloud, back in his normal form. We get a brief glimpse of Miyako in her temple, calling it a miracle that Tetsuo again feels well. Instead of killing him, the biochemical weapon acted like a medicine for him, helping him to gain control again. He marvels at the effect briefly before he sees Kaori's lifeless body. He steps through the rubble towards her when Yamada fires a poison dart at him. It's ineffective. Tetsuo simply shrugs it off before turning his telekinetic powers on Yamada. The American explodes in a massive show of power from Tetsuo. We then get another snippet of Miyako and the Espers as they fear for Kei now that Tetsuo has control of his powers. We see Kei slumped over as Miyako calls out to her telepathically. We then see the caretaker bot as it approaches Tetsuo. Akira stands in the middle of the hallway, directly in Kaneda's path, almost getting crushed. When they pull up, surprised to see him, Tetsuo laughs, calling him Lord Akira mockingly. He then greets Kaneda and Keisuke almost as if it's old times. Somehow, he's surprised to see it's only the two of them who have survived, which enrages Keisuke, leading him to threaten Tetsuo. However, Tetsuo just laughs, saying it's the same old Kai. Kaneda taunts Tetsuo before whispering to Keisuke that he should take Akira and go find Joker. Keisuke doesn't want to leave, but Kaneda convinces him to get Akira to safety. Kaneda then pulls out the secret weapon, the laser rifle, as he stares down Tetsuo. The former friends have a brief back and forth before he trains the laser and fires. Tetsuo catches the blast in his hand like it's nothing, grinning as he does. Kaneda's not deterred though. He distracts Tetsuo with talk of old times as he cranks the laser's power up. He then lets off a massive blast that lights up the entire tunnel. However, when the smoke clears, Tetsuo's nowhere in sight. He was able to teleport outside, where he now taunts Kaneda. Kaneda scrambles through the window before letting off another shot. It's as futile as the last, only leaving Tetsuo laughing. But then, Kaneda uses the laser beam at a lower power to slice across Tetsuo's chest, effectively getting through his defenses. With Tetsuo on the ground in front of him, Kaneda lets off another shot that almost finds its mark, but Tetsuo dodges just in time. Even worse for Kaneda, Tetsuo's trained his telekinetic powers in on him. Back in the tunnel, we catch up with Keisuke as he attempts to radio for Joker. Somewhere outside the stadium, Joker hears the message come through just as Keisuke calls him Piggy, which really pisses him off, providing a little bit of comic relief. Just then, a member of Joker's gang comes barreling down the tunnel towards Keisuke with a status update. Keisuke's attention's elsewhere though. He tells them to round up all the men so they can lead a full-on assault on Tetsuo. Then Keisuke commandeers the guy's bike and blasts off towards the action. Back outside, Tetsuo taunts Kaneda, who's lying in the dust. He spreads his arms wide, making himself an easy target for his old friend, telling him to shoot. But before he gets the chance to, Tetsuo's attention is caught by Kei. She's battered, but looks determined. She sets her sights on Tetsuo, who's taken aback by the amount of power she's able to summon. His feet begin to sink into the concrete as the weight of her might bears down on him. Miyako cries out telepathically, warning Kei not to challenge Tetsuo, but she persists. Tetsuo is able to summon his own powers to get out of her clutches. He then charges her, getting within a few feet when he unleashes his own psychic attack. She gets engulfed in the blast. However, she's able to teleport into the tunnel below, where a bunch of loyalists are hiding out. They're aghast at her appearance, and doubly so when Tetsuo materializes behind her. Cornered, Kei musters every bit of power she has to try and take him down, despite Miyako's warnings. She traps Tetsuo in a blast, then shatters the concrete, but it's not enough. The ground shakes as Tetsuo breaks through in a massive surge of power that sends people flying everywhere. Tetsuo smirks through the falling rubble as he stares Kei down once again. We then get a montage of different scenes. Akira senses the power, calling out to him. Simmons stands in the streets of Neo-Tokyo, remotely controlling the dirigible like a drone. Ryu stands atop a building overlooking the stadium when he hears a noise overhead. It's a squadron of American fighter jets that Chiyoko and Joker and slews of other citizens see. The citizens think the planes are dropping care packages, but it turns out they're carpet bombing the entire city. The chapter ends with an aerial shot of the burning wreckage as the planes continue to drop more explosives on the city. Chapter 33, Strike from Space. Chapter 33 opens with the scene of chaotic fallout from the American attack. citizens are engulfed in the blast as buildings crumble around them. Even Miyako's temple is struck, sending pillars scattering everywhere. The monks jump to action, sweeping Miyako and the Espers to safety, but Miyako's only concerned with the well-being of Kei. The bombing has reached the Olympic Stadium as well. Kanada's able to narrowly avoid the blast, but when he does, he's almost taken out from an explosion from Tetsuo. Kei comes flying through into the stadium, followed closely by Tetsuo. As he's distracted by the Americans' attack, Kanada attempts to get a vantage to take a shot on him, but the laser won't fire. As Kei gathers herself, Tetsuo starts toying with her. He begins to exert psychic force on her as he taunts her to run away before she gets crushed. However, she's unable to move, her body like lead from his powers. As she hunches over in agony, all sorts of debris begins to crash down onto her, drawn into the gravitational field he's created around her. The rubble crushes her as Tetsuo taunts her once again, speculating on how long she'll be able to survive. Just then, Kanada rushes in, catching Tetsuo off guard. Kanada smacks him with the butt of the rifle, sending him crashing down and releasing his psychic grip on Kei. Out at sea, the Admiral gets news of mission accomplished. All weapons were deployed over Neo-Tokyo without any casualties. A battleship is also in range, which she orders to attack right away. On top of that, they also have full control of Seoul's targeting system, and will soon be ready to fire their more powerful laser, Floyd. At the Olympic Stadium, Tetsuo lays face down in the dirt. Kanada seizes the opportunity to maintain the upper hand. He kicks him in the gut, then lands a solid right hook. But once Tetsuo gets a chance, he unleashes his powers again. He misses Kanada entirely, however, blasting the bleachers behind him instead. Kanada doesn't wait long to get back to it. He tackles Tetsuo, slamming his forearm into his windpipe. Tetsuo chokes, gasping for air, while Kanada tells him that one was for Yamagata. Tetsuo then lets off another psychic blast, but again, he misses. Tears stream down his face, and he clutches his throat as Kanada walks him down. Now Kanada's the one who does the taunting. He even speculates that Tetsuo's lost control of his powers again. Kanada grabs Tetsuo by the collar and pulls his face in close, demanding to know what happened to his old friend. At that moment, Kaisuke emerges from the bowels of the stadium. As he calls out for Kanada, he sees the ominous glow of Floyd's laser cannon as it breaks through the clouds. The laser hits nearby in the city, destroying everything in its wake as it carves a path towards the Olympic Stadium. When it reaches the stadium, it rips through the exterior wall, charting a direct course towards Tetsuo and Kanada. Kanada flees, but Tetsuo stands his ground. Just as the laser is about to reach him, it shorts out. Through a brief exchange with the Admiral, we learn it only has a 5-second limit before it needs to recharge. Infuriated, Tetsuo uses his power to tear up a giant slab of earth. He rides it straight up through the atmosphere towards Floyd. At the same time, the Admiral orders another attack, this time targeting the entire city of Neo-Tokyo. The laser charges up and blasts before Tetsuo's attack can land. He's caught in the blast, but maintains course nonetheless. Down on the ground, Kanada scrambles to find his friends. As he does, Akira stumbles out into the area. Kanada scrambles over to him, asking if he's seen Kaisuke, but Akira ignores him. He again says that something's calling to him. When Kanada asks what, he points up to the sky. At that exact moment, Floyd's blast reaches the earth. Kaisuke and Joker both hit the scene as Kanada scoops Akira up and makes a break for it. He doesn't get far before he's cornered. In front of him is a huge drop-off, and behind him, Floyd's laser beam, leaving nowhere for him to go. Just in the nick of time, Joker swoops in on his flying platform. Kanada and Akira jump aboard, narrowly escaping. In orbit, we see several explosions break out aboard Floyd. It fires several smaller laser beams that strike across the city, even hitting Miyako's temple. Aboard the American military vessel, we learn that they've lost control of Floyd. Not only that, it's leaving orbit and crashing down towards Earth. When we see the satellite, it's a fiery ball of wreckage, which Tetsuo rides into the atmosphere. He's using it as a bomb, targeting straight at the American fleet. The Admiral orders all planes launched and all missiles armed. In the time before impact, he orders the scholars to be evacuated via helicopter. When an officer goes to get the scholars, Karmatangi ominously says they don't have enough time. Right on cue, Floyd's laser blasts down into the ocean not far from the vessel. The Admiral orders his planes to counterattack. They lock on and fire as the aftershock from the impact sends waves crashing over the ship. It appears to be a direct hit, but it's not enough. Tetsuo rides Floyd down, making sure it remains on target. Before the ship can fire off any more missiles, the satellite makes contact, exploding on impact. Chapter 34, Phantom Voices. Chapter 34 opens on the burning wreckage of the American aircraft carrier. As the scholars scramble, we see it's taking on water. The ship is going down, Titanic style. Bernardi tries to slog through the water to save Joris, but the part of the ship she was on is already gone. Chaos ensues on board as everyone scrambles to abandon ship. Our perspective then shifts to what's left of the Olympic Stadium. Kaisuke climbs from the wreckage, calling out for Kaneda. Nearby, Kei regains consciousness, the colonel sitting by her side. It turns out he treated her wounds and pulled her to safety after she passed out, despite having suffered injuries of his own. When Kei grasps the situation, the first thing on her mind is Kaneda. He's elsewhere in the city, however, berating Joker to get his flying platform in working order again so he can go and find Kei. We then catch up with Tetsuo. He stands atop the rubble, silhouetted by the sunset. Kaori stands in front of him, but she doesn't seem fully there. She can hear his voice, but all she sees is darkness. Tetsuo shakes her, trying to get her to see him, but she collapses, lifeless. He cries as he realizes his powers weren't enough to bring her back to life. Our perspective then shifts back to Kaneda. Now that night's fallen, Joker can't fix the flying platform, so Kaneda decides to switch his plans. He's going back into the Olympic Stadium unarmed to take him down. He tells Joker to take Akira to Miyako, but Joker protests. As the two argue, Akira wanders off. Kaneda falls into step at his side, trying to figure out where he's going. Meanwhile, Joker trails them, Gatling gun in hand. Elsewhere, Ryu watches Tetsuo from the shadows as he carries Kaori's body into the secret site where Akira was cryogenically frozen. We then shift to Miyako's temple, which was damaged badly in the bombing, causing the loss of many lives. Her monks escort her to the Esper's bedside, where she reveals the dire straits they've fallen into. Their stores of the secret drug that keeps the Espers and her alive was destroyed in the bombing. They won't be able to synthesize any more before their meager supply runs out. Desperate, she calls out to Kei telepathically. Kei receives her message as she sits beside the colonel. It brings her to attention instantly. She leaves to go after Tetsuo, despite knowing that Kaneda's also on his way there and might get caught up in the crossfire. As Kaneda follows Akira, he once again questions the boy about the source of the signal he's following, but it's useless. He's silent as ever. As they walk, Kaneda explains to Joker his idea about how the telepathic connections work, but he's cut short when they notice a figure lurking in the shadows. It turns out to be Chiyoko. It's pretty funny when she tells Kaneda Kei sent her to watch after him, since he takes too many dumb risks. As they're catching up, Akira wanders off once again, leading them to run after him. When they catch up to him, they're trying to redirect Akira, but it's too late. They've already reached the entrance of the abandoned military facility. We're then taken out to sea, where we see the crew and passengers of the downed American vessel boarding lifeboats. It's utter chaos as the soldiers sort through the wounded survivors, trying to get everyone to safety. Our perspective then shifts to Miyako's temple. They've suffered many losses, but her remaining monks are devoted to protecting the Espers with their lives. They use their powers to surround and protect them, as Miyako forges a link with Kei once again. We see her briefly telling the colonel she's setting out after Tetsuo. We then catch back up with Kaneda and crew. As they move through the darkened corridor, Chiyoko notices something skulking in the shadows. She draws her weapon, only to realize it's Ryu, of all people. Although they're surprised to see him, they don't spend too much time chit-chatting once Ryu reveals it's Tetsuo that led Akira there. Deep underground, Tetsuo sits perched atop the cryogenic chamber that once held a dormant Akira. But he's not alone. It seems Kei's the first person to find him. When Kei tells him that Kanada's on his way with Akira, Tetsuo's powers flare once again, his hand showing signs of deterioration. When Kei realizes what's going on, he laughs, telling her she has no idea the power he's holding back. Kanada and crew were forced to take the stairs down, which probably would take days considering that we know the lift ride took something like 15 minutes back when Tetsuo freed Akira from the slumber. After descending for a while, they luckily find the lift stuck in place, and Joker sets off in an attempt to get it operational. Back in the lower levels, Tetsuo laughs in Kei's face. He thinks that Miyako intentionally misled him with her previous guidance, and now he wants Kei to pay for that mistake. As his mood worsens, his powers flare, once again, this time causing his arm to undergo another grotesque transformation. He calls out for Kanada for help as the power overwhelms him. He transforms once again into his giant infant-like form. In the next series of panels, we see that Kanada hears the force of Tetsuo's power surge just as Joker gets the lift moving. We then quickly return to Kei as she evades Tetsuo's onslaught. While she dodges, Miyako tells her that Tetsuo's ego has completely collapsed. Kei's only recourse is to draw upon all her power and strike. We then see Akira calling out to Tetsuo, who we see calls back. He then smashes through the walls as he calls out Miyako's name, but Kei steps forward, vowing that the only way he'll get to Miyako is by getting through her first. Chapter 35, Face to Face. Chapter 35 opens with Kanada and crew descending the lift. While they wait, Ryu slugs from his flask as he has a flashback to his last time on the lift, when he watched his comrade die. He pours some liquor out on the spot of the death. Below ground, Kei focuses her power for an escape attempt, Miyako guiding her along. She blasts through the ceiling into one of the labs in the upper portion of the facility, but Tetsuo follows her. She scrambles into the hallway as his disfigured flesh fills the entire laboratory. At the end of the hall, she climbs over Kaori's lifeless body as she attempts to flee through a narrow opening. Back on the lift, we see that Tetsuo has encroached into the elevator shaft. Joker fires the Gatling gun at him, landing several shots. As he does, Akira begins to call out to Tetsuo more feverishly. Chiyoko realizes the connection between the two, formulating a plan to have Ryu bring the boy far away to keep them from joining forces. Meanwhile, Joker's attack on Tetsuo does little but clue Tetsuo into Kanada's presence. Tetsuo calls out to him as Chiyoko opens fire as well. All of a sudden, Tetsuo begins to deflate, steam emanating from him as he shrinks. Eventually, he returns mostly to his normal form, aside from a portion of his body that resists. He pleads with Kanada to help him. Through his agony, he forces out a plea, telling Kanada he's dying. Kanada's stunned, seeing the humanity briefly return to his old friend. But it doesn't last long. His power returns in an immense surging wave, transforming Tetsuo once again. Before Joker can open fire, the power consumes Kanada. Miyako calls out to Kei, telling her to take Akira and get him out of there before he's consumed by the power as well. Joker and Chiyoko lay down cover fire as Ryu gets the lift moving upwards with Akira aboard. Chiyoko spots Kei nearby and runs to her. She and Joker help Kei as they attempt to board the lift, but they're just late, instead having to take the stairs. Tetsuo latches onto the cryogenic chamber, levitating atop of it all the way up to the surface. As the power surges, Akira begins to channel his own powers in response. At the temple, Miyako and the Espers dread what this could mean, since Akira and Tetsuo's powers share a frequency. Both channel their powers simultaneously, mirroring each other's motions. But Ryu, scared of what he sees, intervenes. He draws his weapon and fires a single shot, hitting Akira directly in the chest. As the boy falls, the entire facility begins to collapse. When Tetsuo senses what's happened, he takes off towards Miyako's temple, riding the cryogenic tank. It crashes into the temple, causing immense destruction. Miyako realizes that he's now being drawn to their power since he lost the connection to Akira's. He's hunting them down, driven to them like a moth to a torch in the darkness. Miyako orders the Espers to flee, to go to Akira. She and her monks will hold Tetsuo off in the meantime. In parting, she reminds them they must free Akira's powers no matter what. Tetsuo attacks before the Espers can flee, but Miyako's monks are able to shield them. Desperate, Miyako calls out to Kei. Back at the military facility, Kei leads Joker and Miyako to a ladder as they scale the elevator shaft. When they get to a platform, Kei finally heeds Miyako's call. She tells Chiyoko that she must leave. It's her duty to take care of Tetsuo, and like that, she teleports away. When we return to Miyako, she says her final goodbyes to the Espers as she prepares for battle. They've evacuated the temple in preparation for one final stand against Tetsuo. As Tetsuo slams through the wall of the temple, Miyako and her monks channel their powers and release an attack on him, knocking him back. Miyako lays out her plan, provoke Tetsuo's anger, and attempt to channel his powers for their own use. We then get a brief glimpse of Kyoko and Masaru as they decide to teleport to Akira before it's too late. Miyako continues to lead her psychic assault, urging her monks to focus their powers. Kei arrives at the scene just as the monks target a focused attack on Tetsuo. Kei tries to stop them, warning them that Kaneda is inside there somewhere, but the strike lands and the monks prepare another. The second strike lands right in the chest, knocking Tetsuo back. In response, Tetsuo's power surges once again, triggering a massive blast of rubble. In the final panel of the chapter, Miyako urges her monks to withstand the barrage so they can continue to fight. Chapter 36, Miyako's Last Stand. Chapter 36 opens with an aerial view of Akira lying face down on the lift. Masaru and Chiyoko descend from the sky and land gently next to him, calling out his name. He's responsive, but his words are belabored. Akira, for the first time showing some personality, smiles as he asks about the other Espers. Kyoko says they're all right there with them, as we see a spectral image of number 26, Takashi, float down gracefully. Images of all the other military test subjects float down behind him. Akira's buoyed by their presence, by the knowledge that no matter what, his friends are always by his side. When Kyoko asks if he has the strength to use the power, he nods. At Miyako's temple, her surviving followers watch in horror as the giant, disfigured form of Tetsuo continues its rampage. Miyako and her monks do her best to combat it, but her powers are failing. She calls for Kei, telling the girl that it's up to her to finish Tetsuo off. Since she and all her monks' powers are diminished, their best bet is channeling all of their powers into Kei for a powerful strike. Miyako and her monks fight for survival as Kei zooms into the atmosphere. In low Earth orbit, she finds Soul. She places her hands on its side and focuses her power. Back on Earth, one of Tetsuo's giant, malformed hands reaches out for Miyako. Her back against the wall, there's nowhere for her to run as it closes its fingers around her. She musters her power for a powerful blast, however, the move wasn't without its cost. Blood spills from her mouth as she collapses. Thankfully, Miyako's act bought Kei enough time. She looks on as Soul's laser fires. The shot's off target, however. As Kei charges up another shot, Miyako calls out to her. Miyako tells Kei to aim for her, that she will help guide the laser. Kei hesitates, not wanting to make such a sacrifice, but Miyako orders her to strike. The laser fires, barreling down to Earth, but it's off target. However, at the last moment, its flight path curves, bringing it down with full force on Tetsuo. Bystanders flee as a gory mess of his body splatters all around them. This blast didn't destroy Tetsuo per se, it triggered another phenomenon, essentially producing a miniature Big Bang, as the rogue scholars described it previously. A giant orb of power spreads from where he stood, consuming everything in its path. As Kei watches from the sky, she speculates that it's sentient. Near where Kei floats in the sky, Akira and the Espers now float in a circle, with Akira at the center. He channels his powers into his own phenomenon in order to combat Tetsuo's. As Akira's power grows, it surrounds and engulfs Tetsuo's, and with this absorption of Tetsuo's power, Kaneda gets released, and both of them are dragged into the heart of the Big Bang. The next few pages are an absolute fever dream, as Kaneda soars his way through Tetsuo's soul, experiencing his memories stretched out ahead of him. He sees himself confronting Tetsuo, the unresponsive Kaori, the rogue scholars telling him his power is consuming him to achieve a greater form. He sees the Colonel preparing to fire Soul at him, Yamada preparing to use the biochemical weapons. He sees the moon still intact, Miyako telling him to control the power by mastering his own weakness. He sees himself crying as a child. He sees Kaneda crying over Yamagata's body, the fateful run-in with number 26 that sparked off all of this chaos. He then sees the first day of school, Kaneda ordering him around in their capsule gang days, and his foster mom, complaining about how much Tetsuo cries. Then Kaneda steps into a memory of Tetsuo crying as a boy. He wonders if he's in Tetsuo's dream, but realizes these are all memories that he's been seeing, through Tetsuo's eyes. He calls out to Miyako, whose spirit responds, confirming his theory, as well as informing him that he's part of all of this. Tetsuo's been able to reach a spiritual plane now that he's freed from the shackles of his body. The scene of Tetsuo then stretches out and zooms away, and Kaneda is sent floating through the ether. He approaches a giant fetus in the womb as the voice of Miyako's spirit speaks to him. "Look into the heart of life's most primal memories," she says, "a life form that has grown and developed during countless, repetitious eons. It has evolved in ways that are far beyond that for which mere happenstance and circumstance alone could account. A cell formed by the organism's memory or molecular form and the memory of an entire universe." Chapter 37, Evolution. Chapter 37 opens with Miyako's spirit continuing its soliloquy. One vast force was released and in seeking its ultimate goal has flowed throughout the universe. The power has dissipated and spread to many outlets, its seeds lying dormant in their individual memories. Kaneda wonders why the power has been so destructive, to which Miyako responds, "The hardships Akira generated may be meant to promote humanity's evolution," revealing to Kaneda that evolution is a programmed flow. According to Miyako, the Espers and all of the other psychokinetically gifted are the future path of human evolution, and inside this new universe, they will grow until someday that evolutionary pathway will benefit all of humanity. Kaneda, in typical Kaneda fashion, calls bullshit. He can't believe that the human race would desire being turned into shriveled mutants like the Espers. At this point, Kaneda gets transported into a sanitized-looking hallway. This is the site of the original military experiment that produced Akira and the Espers. It appeared as something so minute. They were ruthless in their efforts to germinate the seed, force-fed it the harshest of fertilizers. Miyako says as Kaneda travels the hallways into a carpeted playroom similar to the one we saw the Espers in previously. The room is filled with children, including a playful and vibrant Akira. This is the first room in which they housed the children who showed the signs, and then the experiments began. We then see a giant cyberpunk machine hooked up to the head of a miserable-looking test subject, as Miyako continues. The fate of the majority was madness or death, and many in whom the power awoke were left with crippling handicaps. As Kaneda looks down on one of the unfortunate test subjects, he muses that all the powers ever brought them was misery. At that point, Kyoko cuts in, saying that amongst the misery, they also found something: friendship. Friends who could communicate without words because they spoke to each other's spirits. When Kaneda asks who those friends are, she replies, "It's Miyako, the people in their temple, Kei, Chiyoko, Tetsuo, and even Kaneda." As she speaks, her form turns back to that of a normal child as she fades away into a bright light. Kaneda then gets transported to a playground where a child, Tetsuo, stands crying. It's a memory from their youth. As a banged-up looking Tetsuo sulks, a child Kaneda approaches him. He tries to relate to Tetsuo, saying the neighborhood kids used to gang up on him as well, but Tetsuo just runs away. As the adult Kaneda watches, he remembers how Tetsuo took him the wrong way. He just wanted to be friends back then. When the child Tetsuo introduces himself to Kaneda and says he wants to be friends, he's absorbed in a bright flash of light that wipes the entire memory away, throwing Kaneda into the ether once again. He begins to dissolve as well, until the spectral form of Kei appears in front of him. We get a brief glimpse of the chaos of Neo-Tokyo being destroyed by this power surge before we rejoin Kaneda. Kei tells him that Akira is consuming Tetsuo and that Kaneda needs to get out before it's too late. When he tries to grab her, he's dropped into another stream of memories, seeing himself riding motorcycles with Kaisuke. Then when he appeared as a spectral figure to Kei, as he does, Kei tries to guide him back, warning him not to let the illusion dominate him. Kaneda sees flashes of the resistance hideout, of the military prison, of the last Akira phenomenon, before he's transported back to the playground. As he slumps over on a swing, he calls out to Tetsuo. He watches a childhood version of himself as he continues to call out, saying he was supposed to meet him at the playground. At that point, the disembodied voice returns, telling him that Tetsuo is gone and that Kaneda must leave as well. He's thrown out of the memory once again and into the wormhole. As Kei's spectral figure reaches out for him, the voice continues. For your comrades who need you, you must go back. When Kei grabs hold of his hand, our perspective returns to Earth as the orb of power lifts up over Neo-Tokyo and blasts off into the sky. In the following panels, we see the fallout around Neo-Tokyo as the intense storm caused by the power subsides. Survivors across the city scramble to safety as we see shots of Chiyoko, Joker, and the Colonel, all having survived. We also see Simmons helping out amongst the citizens of the city. Kaisuke wades through the floodwater past survivors as he searches for Kaneda. We pan across the wreckage of the city to an outcrop of rubble where Kaneda and Kei stand. Kaneda realizes that all of them, Akira, Tetsuo, the Espers, they're all gone. As he thinks, Kei grabs his attention, showing him that in the destruction of Neo-Tokyo, the old city of Tokyo was revealed beneath it. Chapter 38, the final chapter. Chapter 38 opens with more sweeping shots of the washed-out city. Crabs scurry about as military vehicles touch down. The Admiral disembarks the helicopter amongst a squadron of soldiers. Soon after, the remaining scholars disembark as well. The group walks through the city, overseeing the aid efforts for the refugees, amongst whom they find Dr. Simmons, reuniting with him after his daring mission. As the Admiral moves deeper into the city, the citizens don't appear as appreciative of their humanitarian efforts as he would expect. Just then, an RPG gets shot right in their vicinity, a warning shot from Chiyoko. As the Admiral tries to figure out what's happening, Kaneda and Joker swoop in on the flying platform. Kaneda struts right up to the Admiral and cuts to the chase. He's taken a page out of Tetsuo's playbook, declaring the area sovereign territory in the name of the Great Akira Empire. He kicks the military out of their territory, but has them leave the food. Just absolute boss shit from Kaneda. The Americans vacate the area as Kaneda gets picked up by Kei and Kaisuke on a motorcycle. As they ride off, he tells them the spirit of Akira lives on in their hearts, and so they'll fight to protect what the Empire stands for. After saying respectful goodbyes to their former enemy, Colonel Shikishima, Kaneda enjoys one last joyride, Kei riding shotgun. As he rides, the spirits of Yamagata and Tetsuo join him, at his side once again. Well, that's it. What a wild ride. I can't believe it's come to an end. After years of loving the anime, I'm so glad I took the time to read the manga. feel like my appreciation for the story has grown tenfold. I mean, the expanded scope of the manga alone makes for a great investment, but on top of that, the concepts are just so much more digestible in this form. But also, it just makes the characters so much better. We get so much more time to watch their character arcs and see how these events impact them. I mean, Miyako was essentially relegated to a few shots in the anime, and in the manga, she has multiple chapters where she's a key figure, and her role in the endgame here is unparalleled. And I think getting that insight into the experience of being a military test subject really rounded out the emotional journey of those gifted children. Also, when it comes to the Colonel, I thought he was a great character that really got expanded on so much in the manga. Not gonna lie, I choked up at the end there when he thanked Kaneda and Kei for all their help. He was a perfect foil turned ally for Kaneda. And then, from a YouTube perspective, it's also been a really fun ride. I just started doing this on a whim, not knowing if anyone would ever see these videos. I know it's nothing crazy, but the reception has well exceeded my expectations. I'm extremely grateful for all the support y'all show. It means a lot. I hope to keep seeing you as I work to grow the channel. Anyway, that's it for now. I'll see y'all in the next video.